Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be showing you how to play a game called Steamrollers. This is a game for 1 to 5 players, takes about 30 to 45 minutes. It is published by Stronghold Games and it is designed by Mark Garrett. Not to be confused with Mac Gertz of Concordia fame, which I do quite frequently when I look at that name. So in Steamrollers, it is a roll and write game, which means that everyone's going to have a pad of paper, of which there are many included, and everyone's going to need a pen or a pencil in order to mark on the board, on their individual board, as to what's going on in the game. In the game, you're going to be drafting some dice to either draw railways on your board, connecting cities to towns so that you can make deliveries. You need to upgrade your engine so that you're going to be able to make longer deliveries, which are going to score you more points. And you're also going to be using action tiles, potentially, in order to get bonus abilities, essentially, throughout the game. At the end of the game, we tally up the scores, and whoever has the most points based off of their deliveries, their engine strength, their connections along the board, and any action tiles that either give or remove victory points is going to be the winner. There are a number of different ways that you can modify this game. There are a few different variants that you can try. They're all fairly small mini expansions, but for the purposes of this game, this demonstration, I'm not really going to be showing them, but there are ways that you can make the game harder by blocking out certain areas. Those are like mountains essentially on there. You can add additional ways to score victory points by using these order tiles. And let's see here. And there are also these black coal that is essentially a wild that you can also add into the game. So I'll first explain how the game gets set up. So at the beginning of the game, depending on how many people you have playing, you're going to take a number of white dice plus 1 equal to the number of players. So in a 2-player game, we're going to have 3 dice. We're always going to use the black die. And this game does go from 1 to 5 players, so there are enough dice, for a 5-player game. And then the solo rules do require you to use this special solo tile, which again, I'm not really going to get into that. So in a 3-player game, you have the appropriate number of dice, and then you're going to seed the board using cubes from this bag. So the cubes in this bag are all going to be color coordinated to the spots that we have here on the board. So we have yellow, red, green, blue, gray, and then there are those black cubes as well, which you can use as a variant. So to set the board up, you're going to pull 4 cubes from the bag and put them on each one of these cities, which they're all numbered 1 through 6. So here's 4 cubes right here. I'm going to put them right there. Then you see if any of the colored cubes match the color of the city that they're in, you're going to remove them. So if this yellow one goes away, this red one goes away, both of these gray cubes goes away, this blue cube goes away, and this green cube goes away. And they're gone from the game. You're never going to ever put more cubes back out on the board. If you were playing with the coal variant, for every cube that you removed from the board, you put one of these black coal cubes out there, and then that's a wild, which means that you can deliver it to any city. But you don't have to play with that variant. It doesn't really matter. The game is going to end whenever 3 or more cities at the end of a turn, at the end of a round, whenever 3 or more cities are empty. So if you do play with the coal variant, it could lengthen things just a little bit, but it also allows people to get more points because there's more stuff to do, essentially easier ways to score points. As you can see here, this city only has 2 cubes on it. It's going to be very quick for that city to get empty. You determine who the start player is. That's the last person who missed a train. And then everyone's going to start with one of these special start player tiles. This just is a one-time use at the beginning of the game, and then you just discard it. So this allows you to get an additional engine strength. This allows you to draw 1 piece of track on the board. This just gives you 2 victory points. This allows you to, I forgot what that one does. This one allows you to take one cube from the bag and essentially place it on your board. That's a personal delivery, so only you would be able to deliver it. So that's one extra thing you can deliver. And this allows you to take one of the action tiles here and place it sideways in front of you, which denotes that it's yours, but you haven't used it yet. So once you use these start player tiles, you discard them, and you're going to start the game. These action tiles, they all have an A side, and a B side. There's no matter as to what side you put out. You can mix and match them, A's and B's, doesn't really matter, but there's one for each number, and they all do special things that will allow you to get stuff that you don't normally get in the game. So on a turn, you're going to take all the dice and you're going to roll them. And the start player gets to choose any one of the numbers. That's kind of a bad one, but let's say, all right, so any one of the numbers there, and they're allowed to do a different action, basically, depending on what they want to do. So the first thing they can do is they can draw a track. So drawing track, you would essentially start in the region that you have the number in. So that's the number 2. So right over here. And you're going to draw a track in this region. It can be anywhere you like. It doesn't have to start in the city. These are called cities. These are called towns. You get points depending on how you go through them. But it doesn't have to start in a city. You can make something right here. You can do something right here. They don't have to connect to each other. They don't have to connect to anything. They can just be a random thing out in the middle of nowhere, and doesn't matter. It's not going to score you any points, so it's not a good thing to do that, but it isn't forbidden in the game. So in any case, so I rolled a 2 and then some tracks. So these tracks are showing either you can go straight from one end of a hex to another, or this is a wide turn where you go from one end, skip over one side, and then go to the other one. There's another turn that's a shorter turn that just makes that small angled turn right there. If you're drawing hexes, if you're drawing tracks, these city hexes, you never draw inside of them. So if you connect anything like this, of course that didn't, right? There we go. So if you're doing something like that, now this train track is connected to this city. That's great. What you want to do is you want to try to connect cities to each other. So let's say on my next turn, I rolled that, and the number 4, and I was able to connect that wide turn into that city. So that's great. You can only ever have one drawing in a hex, so I could never cross through that in any way. So by connecting the city number 2 to the city number 4, that's excellent. Now I have a connection from 2 to 4, which means that on a later turn, if I were to roll a 2, I'm sorry, so the first player is going to draft their die. Then the other players are going to be able to draft a die as well. Again, doing the same action or a different action, doesn't matter. So this person could draw a track, or they could do whatever they want, as long as the number matches what it is they're doing. So the second action, like I said, you can do aside from drawing track is you can deliver goods. So this number 2 means that my destination city, the city where my goods are starting, which is here, can be delivered to whatever city matches the color of the good. So this number 2, I have a connection from 2 to 4, so I would be able to deliver this gray good to city number 4 because it's gray. So I would pick that gray good up and I would deliver it, and then that scores me points based off of how many connections that I made between there. So in this scenario, this was one connection basically. So I would mark off one box right here, and that's scoring me a point at the end of the game. Now, what I didn't mention yet is that I actually couldn't make this delivery at this point. I can always make the connection, I can always draw the track, but I can't make the delivery unless I have engine strength in order to make it. So I need to have an engine strength of 1 to make this connection, to make this delivery, because it's only a one space away. So before I would have made that delivery, I would have had to draft a die, and it doesn't really matter what number it is at this point in the beginning of the game, but I would draft a die. So let's say I drafted that 2. On the board, you can see this 2 right here, so I would mark the 2 there. Now, this doesn't mean that I have a strength of 2 in the engine strength. I just have a strength of 1 because I have 1x. If on a later turn I took the 6, okay, now I have a strength of 2 on my engine, which means that I can deliver things that cross through 2 different points of interest. So cities and towns, that's really what you're counting. So if I had a strength of 2, I could make this delivery no problem. But what you want to do is you want to have a high amount of strength. So that'd be a strength of 4, 1, 2, 3, and 6 there. And then, so I have a strength of 4. So let's say if I had a path that went like this, and I would have to go through the towns, unlike the cities where you just have to be adjacent to them. So it was 1, 2, 3, yeah, so. Okay, so say I had a connection like this. Now, if I had, well, let's say this number 4 here, there's some yellow cubes. Let's say on a turn I'd rolled a yellow and I wanted to make a delivery to the number 1. So I have the 4. I start my delivery in the 4 section. I have a connection that goes from 4 to the yellow spot, which is the number 1. But now I've crossed over 1, 2, 3 points of interest there. I have at least 3 engine strength, which means now I'm crossing off 1, 2, 3 boxes on my thing. So that's 3 points for me. So you can see earlier I made 1 delivery for 1 point, but now I made 1 delivery for 3 points. So the more connections you can make between the cities and the towns, and the more engine strength you have, the more points you can earn for making a single delivery. Another rule is that if, let's say this, let's see here, let's say this was connected to here, and then it was also connected to here. Basically, you can only go through a city once. So let's say this was connected to here. So I couldn't like make a loop around here or anything like that. You can only go through a city once. So I've talked about drafting dice to build connections, drafting dice to get strength on your engine. You can also draft dice in order to get these cards here, these action tiles. So when you get an action tile, it will either have a lightning bolt symbol next to it, which means you would use it immediately and then it gets returned to the stack, or it has this infinity symbol here, which means that you keep it with you until somebody steals it from you. You can never voluntarily give it back. And you can have multiple action tiles if you like. Some of these action tiles, if you have them at the end of the game, are worth points. That's +1 point right there. Some of them are worth negative points, so that's -2. The ones that are worth negative points generally are going to give you a bigger advantage throughout the game so that you'll be able to get better and cooler things. You'll be able to do more things throughout the game. Like, for instance, this one, it says that you can ignore whatever track that shows here. If you're building track, you can build whatever track you want. You don't have to be hindered by what the die says. I'm not going to go through all these. The rulebook explains them very well, though. After everyone has drafted a die, you take the start player marker, you pass it to the next person, and then they're going to continue their turn. And you just keep going around the table until the end of the game. Now, I do want to mention, when I mentioned you take a tile, as soon as you take it, you're going to turn it sideways, which means that it's yours, but you haven't been able to use it yet. So that was my turn. I took that. That's there. Goes around the table. When it comes back to me, before I draft my next die, I turn this upright, and then if I choose to use it, I can use it. But if I don't use it, on a future turn, somebody could steal it from me by them rolling that number. So the only way you can get these action tiles is by drafting a die that matches what the number is on the tile. At the end of the game, like I said, once 3 cities are empty, at the end of that round, the game is going to be over. And then we're going to tally up our points. So we're going to see if you have, first you have all your points here, all the deliveries you've made. Then you're going to tally up points to see how many connections you've made between cities, and if any towns have been made connected through there. So from here to here, I have just 1. There's no towns that are connected, so that would get me 1 point. From here to here, I have 1, 2, 3, because I've connected 2 towns in a city, so 1, 2, 3. And then from here to here, I have 1, 2, so that gives me 2 more. From here to here, that's 1. And from here to here, that's another 1. So the bigger your routes are on your board, the more points you're going to score in your connections. Then you have your engine strength. So if you upgraded your engine strength to a 4, a 5, or a 6, you would get additional points. So if you had 4 or more, if you had 4, you would get an additional point. If you had 5, you get an additional point. If you had 6, you get an additional point. So that's another way to score points. Then you see if you have any action tiles that are still in front of you, and you mark how many points you got from that. So this would be a -2 if I had this in front of me. After you total all those up, you write your total right here, and then whoever has the most points wins. And that is the game Steamrollers. If you have any questions, please leave a comment, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.